Well, good morning. Good morning, everyone. This morning, my talk is about how we perceive and experience the world through our state of consciousness. In Unity teachings, there's a teaching of 4 levels of consciousness that we function from. And those 4 levels are described and defined as victim, victor, vessel, and verity. And each level that we function from has everything to do with how we experience life, with our experience of life. The Indian sage and yogi Nisargadatta wrote, "There is a vastness beyond the farthest reaches of the mind. That vastness is my home. That vastness is myself. And that vastness is also love." And that song we just sang and that meditation was to help us experience that vastness, to go beyond the farthest reaches of the mind, to relax the mind into that vastness. And he is writing in that quote, he's speaking from the level of verity consciousness. And verity means truth or actuality. In Unity, we often call it Christ consciousness. In Buddhism, they call it Buddha nature. And, the primary purpose of my talks that I give every Sunday, and the primary purpose of all Unity teachings, and really of all spiritual teachings, of all faiths, is so that we can effectively change our consciousness and expand it, open it up. And that is what it means for our soul to awaken, as I spoke of last Sunday. And so the antidote to a view of the world that makes us suffer, right? If we have a view of the world that makes us suffer, the antidote is to rest in that vastness beyond the farthest reaches of the mind. That is home. That is our true self. That is love, right? For me, when life feels hard, the best answer is meditation and prayer. To touch that vastness again. Because when we do, it's relief, it's release from suffering. It's going home to deep peace again and again and again, right? Paul Hasselbeck, who's a Unity minister, he wrote a book called Heart-Centered Metaphysics, and they teach in Unity SCE classes, they teach 4 levels of metaphysics. And he discusses in this book, his book, the 4 levels of consciousness, but only briefly. And that's why I wrote this talk, because I think this particular teaching it offers so much insight, and it's so helpful in our journey of self-discovery. So the question is, how do we experience ourselves in relation to the world? Do things happen to us and we are powerless? Or do they happen because of us and we experience ourselves as an empowered creator? Or perhaps we experience that things happen through us and we feel ourselves as an instrument of consciousness, that we say that prayer of St. Francis, make me an instrument of thy peace. So we're an instrument, that's things happening through us. Or ultimately, do we have the experience of no separation, of non-duality? So there is just the one life living itself. It's experiencing itself through different states of consciousness and myriad forms, just the one life. Well, I would guess, because you've been on this path for some time, that you've experienced moments in all these levels of consciousness. Paul writes about the importance of looking at these states of consciousness with curiosity and leaving out the judgment. He says we must learn to watch our consciousness and its impulses and its desires as a chemist watches his solutions. It's important to bring in compassion so that self-observation doesn't become self-condemnation. There's a very big difference in observing ourselves and condemning ourselves, right? So if we're good at observing ourselves, we'll likely see that we can shift in and out of multiple levels of consciousness all in one day, right? I find that. I'm amazed at how many states of consciousness I can have in just one day, and the breadth of how I can vacillate. We're very fluid in how we feel and how we perceive. I'll give you an example, something that happened this week for me. I live in this a big old house, a very neat old house that looks like one of those old Southern mansions that you might see in Gone with the Wind or something. And it's divided into 4 apartments, and there are 4 other cottages on the property that are part of this estate. So there's about 8 of us that share one washer and one dryer in the old shed that's a laundry room. So the other day I went down to do a load of laundry and I was really happy. The washer was free. That's not always the case. And I carried my clothes in a bag because I haven't bought one of those laundry baskets yet. I need one. And I went down about 45 minutes later, thinking the washer was probably just done. Well, I got down there and someone had taken my clean clothes, my wet clothes, out of the washing machine it was just done, and put them on a dirty old table, a dusty, dirty old table in that shed that, I'm probably sure has had its share of mice crawling on. So I didn't like it at all. I didn't like it one bit. And I said some words along those lines out loud to myself, just to myself there in the laundry room. And then I put the clothes in the dryer. And I had a moment of feeling victimized, like I didn't like someone coming and touching my clothes and putting them on a dirty, dusty table after they were just washed. And so then I went and I was sitting out back at a table in the backyard and I saw the culprit, my neighbor Michael. He was carrying a basket of his clothes to the laundry room. And so I said, Michael, so you're doing laundry. I noticed my clothes on a table in there, and there's probably mice around. So, I'll be getting a laundry basket, but until then, maybe either put the clothes in the dryer or leave them in the washer, if you don't mind, right? So I felt empowered, in offering a solution so we could continue to cultivate our new friendship. And he then proceeded to tell me how he's lived here 3 years and that sometimes people leave their clothes in that washer all day long. They just leave them in there or they leave them in the dryer. So I said, well, maybe we could create a system. Maybe we could create a schedule where we each have a day for laundry, or we each have a morning and afternoon. And he liked that idea. So what could have been me feeling like a victim and feeling resentful turned into me taking action and feeling victorious, like a victor in the situation, but also like a vessel in that spirit guided me, and guided us together to co-create a solution, to come up with a way we could solve the problem and we could create more cooperation in our little community here for more harmony. So I offer this example because in this example, I really kind of went through 3 modes of consciousness. You can kind of see the 3 modes. If I felt a victim at first, but I didn't stay there. But if I would have stayed in feeling that, I'd just decide I don't like Michael, right? I wouldn't even say a word to him and I'd just feel bad. But if I was to be a victor and I just stayed in that, I would have just told him that's not okay. And I would have felt empowered by that. But then we wouldn't be closer to a solution and there might, be more of a distance. But having the thoughts that came of like harmonious solutions flowing into and through me, I was a vessel for ideas of greater good for all of us, something that could benefit us all in being happier. Now, I never did get to feeling verity consciousness. Maybe if I had been meditating deeply all morning, I would have just felt, well, spirit is just doing laundry the way it is. Have no attachment, just be one with the laundry and the launderers that we are, right? I and the launderers are one, right? But I'm not quite there yet. I never got to that. But there's a wonderful teaching from Eckhart Tolle, and he talks about what we do when we're unhappy with a situation. And he says there's really only three sane choices, and those three sane choices. This is a really key teaching for today. The three sane choices are: change the situation, leave the situation, or accept the situation. So let me read you a quote, because this is rich. This quote has so much wisdom. Tolle says, see if you can catch yourself complaining in either speech or in thought, right? About a situation you find yourself in, or what other people do or say, or your surroundings, your life situation, or even the weather. Because to complain is always non-acceptance of what is. And it invariably carries unconscious negative charge. When you complain, you make yourself into a victim. When you speak out, you are in your power. So change the situation by taking action or by speaking out if necessary or possible. Leave the situation or accept it. He said, all else is madness. So the three choices are change it, leave it, or accept it. Change it, leave it, or accept it, right? And we change it by taking some action, or speaking out like I did about the laundry, and those three choices apply most easily to our everyday situations. There are some much more extreme situations, like someone stuck in a house in Ukraine with bombing all around. They may not be able to change it or leave it, and really it feels unacceptable. And also as children, when we're children, we're not fully able to make those choices. But in most everyday situations as adults, we are. And in the laundry room example, I changed it by speaking out. I didn't want to just accept it, and I didn't want to leave. I like it here. Um, so I made an attempt to change it by speaking out. I've done a lot of counseling over the years, being a minister, being a healer and a teacher. And I would have people sometimes come to me and they would complain. They would share about a situation being difficult, but I couldn't see any movement or interest in making a change or in leaving or accepting and finding peace with the situation. And Tolle describes that as madness. And I'm really amazed how long people will stay angry at life, at a situation, and yet not make one of those choices. I saw a funny meme on Facebook that said, maybe one of you guys posted it. It said, I feel like I have all this anger inside, but no one special to share it with. So Paul Hasselbeck, he describes that as victim consciousness. And he describes victim consciousness as occurring when I believe and feel that everything is happening to me. I'm a victim of the world I see and experience, and I have little or no control about what is happening to me. And I just want to reiterate, it's so important not to judge this state of consciousness. That does not help, but to really look at it, be curious, because we all are, have some measure. We all experience this state of consciousness, the victim state, and often we feel that because as a child, we felt disempowered. And there are real victims in this world, no doubt, and if as a child we felt victimized, we sometimes will form a belief that we don't have power. And so we need a lot of compassion for that. And it takes real work to uproot that false belief and realize, that old conditioning, and realize that we do have power now. We do have power, and that we are co-creators, and we have tremendous creative power. We're made in the image of the creator that created galaxies, right? So we have the power to design and experience our lives. I have a dear person in my life I love so much, and they had a childhood that was quite painful, and they experienced abuse. And I so much want for them to see that, in fact, they're not powerless now, and make that shift, and also that they are worthy to be and feel empowered. Sometimes when we feel unworthy, that keeps us feeling powerless. And then that keeps us feeling victimized by the world. So it takes a lot of courage. It takes a lot of courage and work to be able to look at this and meet the conditioning that created victim consciousness, and with dedication to our self-growth, change our view. Growth comes when we can move from experiencing life as a victim to feeling more and more like we have creative power. So many unity teachings are for that evolution in our consciousness. Often, we can't control others and how they treat us, but we can control how we respond and how we perceive what's happening. How we respond to life every moment is a cause that always has an effect. Do you remember I gave a talk recently on cause and effect? How we respond to life is a cause that always has an effect, and often it has more of an effect than we realize, way more of an effect. I would say we could cut our suffering in life in half, at least, if we became skilled at responding versus reacting to whatever happens. Like in that laundry room example I gave, if I were less skilled and more reactive, I might have just gone and found Michael and lectured him, right, on how wrong he was to put my clothes on that dirty table. But instead, I reserved that lecture for the wooden beams in that laundry room. And so I was able to release that energy, which is important. I was able to transform that energy and then proceed, with a wiser response. If I were to give him that lecture, though, it would probably make us feel this uncomfortable ongoing vibe, which I know not to create in my life these days. There's a wonderful book. Michael Brown wrote it, called The Presence Process. I highly recommend it. But let me read you what he writes, because he's so helpful and insightful on this issue. He says the single adjustment in our evolution in moving from reactive behavior to responsive behavior benefits our entire experience. Reactive behavior is based on the belief that the world is happening to us. It's therefore our duty to either defend ourselves or impose our will on what's happening. Michael points out, though, how often we don't see how we create situations, and that the gap between cause, us being reactive, and the effect, the way things unfold in a way we don't like because of our actions, that the gap is just long enough between cause and effect that we don't see that we caused it. That is so helpful and true. He says, here's a great example. He says, for example, we might think poorly. We might think poorly of another person. And then within a matter of days, this individual behaves poorly towards us. When we live in time, we automatically assume their poor behavior towards us is validation of our victim or victor mentality, when actually, in actuality, it's the consequence of our poor thinking. It's the consequence of our thinking poorly of them. Well, I think that is just, it's so true. And so, that's the work that it takes to become conscious. We start to truly realize that our thoughts alone have an effect. Our thoughts are prayers, that song. Our thoughts have an effect, their energy. And when we think them, they are out there in the energetic field. And anyone who's sensitive to energy at all will pick it up. Will pick it up. So we become more aware of the energetic cord that connects the causes and effects that flow throughout our experience. And part of what keeps us stuck in experiencing ourselves as a victim is that we have old emotional charge in us that's not cleared. And that's still stuck in there, and it's unintegrated, you could say. So that emotional charge causes us to unconsciously create more experiences that make us feel victimized, right? You notice this when you interact with somebody that's always defensive. You might know somebody like that no matter what you say, it somehow they're offended by it. They just and that energy, it keeps love out, right? Which then makes them feel unloved and more like a victim and more defensive. So they don't, you can see how they're creating that without realizing it. I always use the example, you've probably heard it so many times now, that, when I lost my home in the campfire, a month later, I fell and I broke my knee and tore my ACL. And I use that example because it was just so hard. And during that experience, it was hard not to feel like a victim. I know that at times I did. But I have enough mindfulness practice that I'm always watching where I am. I'm watching what my attitude is, what my mind is thinking. And I know where I want to be in my consciousness. And that's a really important point. We have a choice. We always, as we wake up, we always have a choice of how we perceive and how we meet life's experiences. And I discovered through that hardship that I trust life and that I choose to trust in the goodness of this universe and in the creative power that lives in me to respond to whatever life brings. So that is key to growing into a vessel consciousness where life can live you. Life can give you the experience it does, and life is for you. Life is never against you, and you trust life and you trust God. So we move from feeling like a victim, where we feel life just happens to us and we're helpless, to feeling like a victor, where we realize we have creative power and we affect life. And then we go a step deeper from victor to vessel as we learn to open and surrender to a higher power and let that flow through us. A lot of Unity affirmations. I was on the Unity website and I was looking at they have affirmations for everything, for whatever your category, peace or healing or, guidance. And I was reading their affirmations, and so many of them are from vessel consciousness. Here's a few I found that are beautiful. Spirit leads me, guides me, and walks beside me. The energy of divine zeal lights up my body, mind, and spirit. By the power of Christ in me, I am directed and protected. The peace of spirit lives in the quiet of my heart. So you can feel those affirmations. They invite the flow. They invite the presence to flow through us. They are all from vessel consciousness, the vessel level. And they have this feeling of empowerment, but also a feeling of openness and surrender so that spirit may live through us. But there is still a me in that vessel consciousness, as in spirit guides me or make me an instrument. There's still a me. So there's a deeper level, the fourth level of consciousness, which is called Verity. And Verity is the non-dual state. And when we're fully in this state of consciousness, we can't even use the word me or mine or my, right? It's an experience where you had felt yourself to be a drop of water, and then that drop fell into the ocean. And there's no longer any sense of being just a drop. You feel only yourself as the ocean, as the ocean. I wrote a song from this state. One of my favorite songs. I haven't sung it for you guys yet, but called "The Lord of Love." And the first verse goes, "Oh mind, fading away in this light. Oh heart, stretching into a boundless ocean of love. Every thought I thought dissolves in the silence. There is rest at last and lasting peace. Boundaries fade away, so wide is this feeling. Indescribable, the vision revealing. Oh, the Lord of love. Oh, the Lord of love is here." And when you rest into those words and the meaning, the vibration, the me and the my and the mine is gone. There's just the Lord of love. There's just love. There's the vast ocean of being. And that is verity. As Jesus said from that state, I and the Father are one, right? I am. I quoted Nisargadatta. I just love his book, I Am That. And he was a non-dual teacher. And he wrote, "I cannot but see you as myself. It is in the very nature of love to see no difference." And that's from that state of verity. And he explained, our usual attitude is, I am this. But he says, consistently and perseveringly separate the I am from this or that and try to feel what it means to be without being this or that. Just be. Just experience being without attaching any this or that. You know, just when I read those words, I just feel this higher vibration of truth. I know you probably do too, because it's our destiny to live in this level of consciousness, you know, but it requires us to want this level and that we consistently place our attention on developing to this level. So in closing, I hope this gives you food for thought and helps you to notice, you know, to maybe become more mindful of whatever level you're living from, moment to moment, day to day. You know, I pray that we discover there is much more happiness available to us when we transform our consciousness, and as we do. And it's work. It takes effort. But there are very solid ways for us to do just that. So may you and may all beings be awake and be deeply, deeply at peace. Om Shanti.